welcome back to another Articulated Point. How you doing, Phillip?
I'm good. Seems like it's only been a few weeks since we just did our last one.
Yeah, that's true. This one's really close on the heels of the other one. This one's special, though. This one's for Operation A.R.M.O.R. We're going to be talking about Crimson Guard Immortal, specifically, and his appearance all around the globe.
Yes. Not as widespread as you might think, or at least, that we found, but still worth noting.
Yeah, I guess he retains the elite status by not appearing all the time.
That or his appearances elsewhere are pretty much the same as his appearances here. So there's a few different changes we want to highlight, but we should be able to cover just about all of them pretty well without being too long-winded.
That is true. That is true. Okay, so the first Crimson Guard Immortal is from 1991 from the United States. And I did kind of want to look at this figure first to set the stage for all of the others. And it's a great figure. I remember whenever this one was coming out, the very first thing I ever saw of it was from the Impel trading card set. And so I had read his bio and had that thing locked in my brain. And then I got the figure much later. And the bio on the card, the Impel card, is not quite the same as what it says on his file card.
I have to confess, I didn't actually know about Crimson Guard Immortal because he came out, I was still a kid. I didn't know everything on the back of that card. I didn't learn about his existence until years later. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We have very different origin stories here.
Which one should I read first? I guess I will read the details that are on the Impel trading card, since I believe those were the ones that actually made it to market first. His Impel trading card says that his current assignment is Cobra Elite Troopers. I don't think that actually was going to appear on the file card anywhere, so it makes me wonder where that part comes from. But then the bio actually says, the Crimson Guard Immortal is made up of well-known dignitaries and diplomats from around the world. They're well-educated, affluent, high-ranking officials who live apparently normal lives, but every man in this outfit is a ruthless, cold-blooded fighter armed with enough special weapons to wipe out a battalion. And if they can't win by stomping and shooting, they'll get you by suing and auditing. And that may sound very familiar from the file card, but it's not quite the same, because I'll skip the beginning of the file card, but the file card says, a CG, when not serving as a personal bodyguard to the head snake, is involved in covert operations around the country under deep cover, assuming an apparently normal occupation and frequently running for public office. That's a little bit different. And then it goes on to say the Immortals are lawyers or accountants who pump iron, wear body armor, and carry big guns. What they can't get by stomping and shooting, they'll get by suing and auditing. The whole suing and auditing thing makes me think that these two bios did come from the same source because it has that same line. But yet they're very different because the one that was released said that they are running for public office. The one that was on the file on the Impel card says that they are well-known dignitaries and diplomats from around the world. So I found that to be very, very different.
I think that kind of is just sort of an extrapolation of the original Crimson Guard, who had to be accountants in time, and then they're just kind of ramping that up by saying they've infiltrated government.
Yeah, I kind of always thought, I guess I was getting to be an older collector at the time, so I was really reading in between the lines, maybe too much. But it seemed to me that the Crimson Guard Immortal was like a step up from just being a Crimson Guard, because while the Crimson Guards are lawyers and accountants, the Crimson Guard Immortals are dignitaries and diplomats. It's a little bit of a higher ranking official around the world. So I kind of thought that was a bit of the elite at the time. And I did find it interesting that they changed that by the time it got to retail.
Yeah, as for the Cobra Elite Troopers, that's the specialty on their file card, is Elite Trooper on there. So that kind of tells you where that came from.
It's just weird that it calls it current assignment. I guess maybe somebody there in Impel was kind of taking the information that they were getting and translating it onto the cards.
And it could just be some copy editor at Impel just getting the file card and trying to summarize it in a way that'll fit on the back of the card. We could definitely be looking too much into it too.
That is absolutely true. It may not be me just reading between the lines, but them truncating things and making up their own stuff and sending it off and it got approved. But I did want to take a look at some of the earlier images of the Crimson Guard Immortal. I like to always go into some of the insert catalogs as well as the Toy Fair catalogs to see if I can find anything different. And this time it's actually incredibly kind of boring.
Can't win them all.
No, you can't. The only thing that's really different is that the detail of silver on his helmet is missing. And basically, on his helmet, he has a sculpted in Cobra logo. And then on the released figure, that detail has been painted, which it's basically just an upside down U shape of paint that fills in that Cobra logo. And then he doesn't have the logo on his left arm either. And you can just kind of tell that this is a resin figure in these images. And I love looking at that. You can see his thumb there is unpainted, and that's probably because it's scraped off putting it on the handle of that vehicle. And then I guess we kind of get to the figure that was the whole reason for us getting together today. And that is the release of Crimson Guard Immortal in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, this has been a figure I've kind of been a little fascinated with ever since it showed up online on Yojo all those years ago. It was a mystery back then. It's still kind of a mystery now, but you know, we'll tell you what you got.
Yeah, it's strange. There's just a variant of the figure. I do remember a guy I knew at the time, who's a local G.I. Joe collector, was visiting England for a short period of time. I think in 92, maybe 93. And he asked me if I wanted him to pick up any Joes just so that I could have them on the card. And I said, yeah, pick me up a Crimson Guard Immortal. And I said that because I like Crimson Guard Immortal. And he was like, why would you want Crimson Guard Immortal? And I think that he was aware of this variant, but the figure that I got was just the standard figure. So the standard one that is just like the US exists, but there's also the special one that actually has the Rock Viper head mold.
Yeah, he's got a different head.
Yeah, it's really a weird thing that happened. I really can't think of anything like this happening at the time or even since. And I think that we all have the same very popular explanation as to why this probably happened.
That was just kind of missing a mold, so they had to swap whatever one they had available with it.
Yeah, my guess would be that they probably were using the mold, the head mold anyway, at the time, to create a Cobra. That has always been my prevalent theory anyway. Create a Cobra came out in the United States in 1993, and Crimson Guard Immortal came out in the UK in 1992. But like I said, I did get one with a standard head. I don't know exactly when the one with the Rock Viper head was released. It's entirely possible, because of the fact that they would carry things forward from the previous year, that the 1993 releases used the Rock Viper head for a brief period of time. But this one is so hard to come by. It was just a very brief moment in time, it seems, that it actually existed. I've seen only a couple of these carded.
And we should stress this is still conjecture on our part. We don't have an official explanation to work off of.
Right, yeah, it's just pure conjecture, but it seems more than coincidental to me that 1993, that Crimson Guard Immortal head would be used on the Targat body to create a new figure. And then for whatever mysterious reason, it disappeared for this, and then reappeared later because the whole body was used later. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's not the only weird thing about this release of the Crimson Guard Immortal, and that's the fact that on the back of the head, there is no peg. Rock Viper has a peg off the back of his head, but the Crimson Guard Immortal does not.
It's strange. They're going into a pre-production mold to fill in a gap in their production schedule.
It does feel that way, because if you look at the pre-production Rock Viper, that version of the figure did not actually have the peg in the back of his head. And a lot of times that's because the pegs on the figures for the attachment for accessories or hoses, that would be something that would be added in engineering. directly to the metal tooling, and that's not something that would actually be a part of the original sculpt. So it makes sense that the Rock Viper EP engineering pilot would not have that, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the Rock Viper prototype head would have been being used to make Crimson Guard Immortal. It's possible that they filled it in and that I just can't find that peg spot on this figure, but as of 1993, it seems like they probably wouldn't have been playing around with that anymore.
Who knows what goes on in those factories in China, man? They could have just been real last minute. We have this sitting around. Let's just get it going.
Yeah, because it's not like they changed any details on the sculpt. The mouth is just still his mouth, just painted black. That kind of upside down U that I was talking about that paints the Cobra logo, that's still on his forehead, but of course, there's no sculpted Cobra logo.
It's very strange. It just feels like last minute adjustment to me,
Yeah, it definitely feels like they were scrambling to get something done, and that maybe that upside down U is a tampo that would be able to be applied to either figure.
I could see that happening.
And then that's not the only release of Crimson Guard Immortal around the world, isn't that right?
Yeah, no, this is where I actually got my first Crimson Guard Immortal, and this is when I actually heard about the figure existing. Is the Funskool release in India.
Which one do you have? Because let me see the head of yours, if you don't mind. I'm curious.
Here's mine right here.
Okay. Interestingly, there were a couple of different paint masks that existed for the Funskool release of Crimson Guard Immortal.
As is typical of Funskool, they can't do it just one way.
That's true. That's true. They have to always make sure that there's some weird variant that's available out there somewhere. Did you get yours, I'm going to guess, from smalljoes.com?
I did indeed get mine from smalljoes.com.
Yeah, I think they were $3.99, I believe. They were pretty cheap at the time.
They were cheap enough that a poor college student like me could afford to get a few.
I remember I bought one and my brother was buying one, and when they came in, the top of the head was painted gold, but there's actually a point at the top where it stops. But I had noticed it, and a bunch of people, I think it was on joecustoms.com, some people were posting that the ones that they were getting were this way. I do not collect Funskool variations because that is a rabbit hole that never ends.
It'll drive you nuts, man. Mine proceeds all the way down to the visor, the gold. On one side. On the other side, it's like he had a little bit of melted paint or melted plastic. It scrapes off. It's there, but there's a chunk taken out. But that's kind of how he arrived. That's, Funskool quality control for you.
Yeah, I ended up ordering another one, and the second one that I got did have it fully painted. And then he also was available actually as a vehicle pack-in. If you bought like a Funskool vehicle that said that there was a random or surprise driver inside, sometimes it would be the Crimson Guard Immortal. So it seems to me that the Stranger one is the one that I have pictured here with the not fully painted gold at the top. And that's just a weird choice, because that's really the main thing that's different from the American one.
The Funskool one's got some extra silver details, especially on the boots and the gloves, but
yeah,
that gold crest is a unique Funskool choice to add. And it does give him a nice little pop of color, but the straight across look, it's odd.
Yeah, like they dropped the silver on the shoulders and they made the gloves. Like you said, there's more silver in other places. But that thing that, if you just aren't looking at them side by side, that thing that sticks out the most is where did that gold come from? The ammo belt on that one is super, super tough. I tried to take some images, and this was the best that I could do. It barely is able to move, but it's there. But I really like that figure.
And everybody was happy to get a cheap Crimson Guard Immortal. That wasn't too far off from the Hasbro release. I know there was a lot of good chatter about that back in the day when he came out.
The color choices on the accessories sure are interesting, though.
Not a fan of that, but, Canna Testers takes care of that.
That's true. The thing that I did kind of feel bad, though, about for kids in India is that his file card still says licensed to operate all Cobra land and air vehicles, including a Hammerhead and Hurricane, and neither of those vehicles were released in India.
They can dream.
Yeah, hopefully by now, some of those kids grew up, and if they really wanted one, they've gotten one.
Oh, we hope.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't know. We can ask Funskool Ronnie if he has those things or if he cared. He seems to be the one that I listen to for tales from back in the day of collecting Funskool. I really like his channel.
All right, so now we have to fast forward to 2003 for our next Crimson Guard Immortal, who came packaged with the KB Toys exclusive Cobra Cat 2. And it's a Crimson Guard Immortal who has very little crimson on him.
Yeah, they went with the blue. I don't know. I think that if it had been a blue that would have matched Tomax and Zaymot a little bit more, I kind of would have gotten that feeling like maybe he's so high ranking that he's getting close to where Tomax and Zaymot are, where they are primarily blue, but then they have that splash of crimson on them, because he really doesn't have much crimson at all.
Yeah, it's an odd color blue too, because it's a blue gray, and it's kind of like a dirty light navy blue. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not a good color.
Yeah, almost like a clay blue.
I think, literally has crimson in the name. They probably should have figured out a way to get more color, even if it was just like coloring the armor red.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I like the variety that they offer, but yeah, it would have been kind of interesting, I think, to have had the armor in red. I think that's a good call. There's a lot of different things that they could have done. The one of the things that they didn't do, and I try to imagine in my head what it may look like, is if he had accessories, because this version of the figure didn't come with any accessories at all. So if you're going to put accessories with him, what ones would you put him with him, or what color would you like them to be if he had had them?
Oh, let's be honest. If he had gotten accessories, it would have been the Saw Viper backpack and the AK-47 from Red Star.
That's probably true. But if he had the original ones, I kind of bounce back and forth between having them just be black like the original, or having them be a variety of colors like the Funskool one, because the Funskool one, at least it kind of demonstrates to us that those accessories were not all in the same tooling, and you could have isolated some colors in between them.
Silver or gray could have worked well, yeah.
There are actually some rumored plans for another Crimson Guard Immortal, and we recently covered that in our Articulated Points video from July of 2023, where we talked about Infiltrate Cobra Island, and that was a very Crimson Guard episode, and we were talking about the possible plans to include a Crimson Guard Immortal in the Crimson Guard Force set from Toys R Us in 2005.
Yeah, so if you want to check that out, we won't rehash it all here, but go watch a previous video, huh? We could use the numbers.
Yeah, but there were other plans for a potential Crimson Guard Immortal. That's where I think maybe your plan of doing some red armor would have been cool, and I'd love to see this figure come out again. I miss the O-ring stuff so badly. It's a shame.
I wish we'd see more O-ring stuff from the 90s, because all the retro stuff we get seems to be early 80s now, and it's been done.
Yeah.
Some of them have been done to death. But we need a little bit more variety.
Yeah, we do, because that actually would have been the last use of the original Crimson Guard Immortal mold, because after this, the only thing that we have Crimson Guard Immortal, am I wrong? Am I wrong in this? That the only thing that we have after this is the FSS 3 from 2015?
That is correct, sir. That is correct.
Holding in on being truly elite. The Crimson Guard Immortals are fanatical super soldiers who swear a fearsome oath of absolute obedience to Cobra Commander. So most of the file card is the same as what was released on the original figure. But this one goes on and has an entire section that's different.
The Immortal class forms the upper echelon of these ranks, and also serves as the Guardians of the Colors by displaying and escorting the Crimson Guard flag during official Cobra functions. The Crimson Guard Immortals are required to hold a degree in either law or accounting, which, places them in line with the regular Crimson Guard, to ensure that the long-term financial goals of Cobra are being secured. However, they receive further training in mixed martial arts and advanced weapon systems. In order to maintain their exceptionally high standards, they constantly pump iron and are physically more assuming than standard guardsmen. As a ceremonial unit, they wear distinctive helmets and body armor, as well as have access to a secret cache of prototype airburst weapons. This makes them some of the most formidable fighters in the Cobra Legions.
Yeah, and the really interesting thing is that if you check Mark Balamo's book on G.I.Joe that includes some information about pre-production file cards.
The Ultimate Guide to G.I. Joe.
Yes, the Ultimate Guide to G.I. Joe. It'd be nice if he would get another reprint of that out because it's an excellent book. And they, every time he reprints it, it sells out, and then that thing skyrockets in price in the secondary market. And it's also noted in Dan Klingensmith's book that the part where it says they're required to hold a degree in either law or accounting, that part was actually part of the original file that was then truncated by Hasbro for the original Crimson Guard Immortal. So I think that what the club did here is they included some of that material that had been cut out and gave us a longer file card. But then it does seem that maybe some of this was added in specifically for the FSS figure.
Yeah, the FSS file cards generally tend to be very dense paragraphs of text, trying to squeeze in as much information as they can get in there. And that's certainly not the way Hasbro did it, and it's definitely not the way Hasbro was doing it in 2015.
I really like the fact that they were doing that, though, because it's just nice to have that little bit returned to the official version of the character, and I kind of think the rest of this may have been a little bit of explaining some of the other accessories that came with the figure. The figure actually originally was part of a wave of figures that was canceled and shown to us in 2012. At JoeCon in 2012, they had the legendary concept cases where they just showed us a slew of figures that were not going to come out that had been canceled. And then the club went about trying to get us some of those figures in the following years. And considering the fact that that only happened from 2012 up through like 2018, actually, I think some shipped in early 2019, they did a good job of getting a lot of those heavy hitters and big ones there for us. But you can see the differences between the concept case figure and what the club actually came out with.
Yeah, the club added a little bit more deco to it, which, given the prices we were paying for those figures, is definitely welcome.
The original figure didn't have, what is that, some grenades on his upper body armor?
Yeah, it's grenades up there, and then just ammo magazines.
If you look at the concept case figure, the sides of it actually were painted red, and then the back of him was painted actually a lot differently.
I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm not a big fan of this figure. The original Crimson Guard, he had bulk to him, and this guy's got some of the skinniest arms that were available in 2013 when these molds were taken. And then all that cool strapping and gear that was on his legs just kind of replaced by baggy pants with knee pads. He loses a lot of the character of the Crimson Guard Immortal in this translation.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I like the head sculpt, just fine, but the rest of it really is just kind of making do with what was available. I'd even like to see a new 6-inch Crimson Guard Immortal. I think it's a very worthwhile character.
He'd work great in Classified, I agree.
I mean, the Classified Crimson Guard itself is one of the best sculpts so far, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that just brings me to one final question for you, Philip. If you have an idea, I have an idea, but I want to see what you think. Why do you suppose they are called immortal?
I'm going to go with the same reason we had in the movie 300, a battalion of soldiers called the Immortals. That it was a pure intimidation factor.
Yeah, I think that they may actually be based on those soldiers. They were what, the Persian soldiers, I think?
Yeah, and I say like the movie 300, like they didn't exist in history that way. They did. It's just
right.
That's my cultural touch point.
Yeah, me as well. That's actually what I thought of first, and I actually had to kind of look to see what information on the Immortals was actually out there, which is only a few references, and I think even historians are still very curious exactly what they were all about. But I did notice on the pre-production materials that are in Dan Klingensmith's books that they actually say Crimson Guard, and then in quotes, the Immortal, or the Immortals. So it's not just Crimson Guard Immortal, it's Crimson Guard the Immortal. So it definitely seems to tie it even closer to those real-life soldiers.
Hey, we're getting a little bit of history with our play pattern.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, so I think that about does it today. We've kind of covered Crimson Guard Immortals from around the world and throughout time. There's not a ton, but it is definitely one of the gems of the G.I. Joe line.
And it does make it largely pretty easy to collect, excepting that rock viper head.
Okay, well, thanks again. I hope that you enjoy the rest of Operation A.R.M.O.R, and thank you.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. Let's get some more subscriptions and views, because we like it when people feedback and give us, attention.
Yes. Please be sure to check out Articulated Points on YouTube and like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Articulated Points. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'd appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to learn more about some of the toys featured in this episode or want to follow us on social media, links are in the description below this video.